Hello and welcome to a new episode of In the District. Today we're sitting down with Council Member for District 17, Rafael Salamanca Jr. Join us as we talk about his early beginnings, what is currently happening in the South Bronx, and of course his thoughts as his first interview in our latest studio. I'm Jonathan Calixto, and this program is brought to you from BronxNet's brand new Media and Technology studio in the South Bronx. Council Member, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, now I know obviously you are no stranger to our studio, but this is the first time you take a full tour of where everything is renovated. Talk to me about how you feel. What are your first thoughts?
It's a beautiful space. This was actually one of the first projects that I approved when I came into the council in 2016. And to see how it's flourished, the services that you're providing to this community. You may not know, but this was an empty lot decades ago, and when I would go to high school up the block, I would always see this as a kid, seeing an empty lot. And,
wow.
And here I am as a council member being able to approve this and actually doing an interview in this building. So thank you for
that's a full circle moment, and thank you so much as well for being obviously behind pushing that to have something like this in the Bronx. Now, of course, council member, with your title, I know you also cover the South Bronx area, and I want to start off by just highlighting what are some of the things that are happening currently in District 17.
Yeah, so I represent the South Bronx, Melrose, a piece of Mount Haven, West Farms, Hunts Point Avenue, Longwood, and in the last for the last 8 years, I've had the honor of representing a community that I was born and raised in. As a council member, when I first got in, I focused on areas that for decades were ignored. Very simple things, stop signs where there were no stop signs, schools, elementary schools. There was an elementary school that I went to, CS 150. I remember graduating in the early 90s from that elementary school on a June, and it was extremely hot that summer. My sister graduated 3 years later from that school. We went to her graduation in that auditorium. It was extremely hot as well. Well, fast forward in 2016, I'm elected, and I'm visiting schools for graduations. Wow. And I go back to my former elementary school, and it was just as hot then in 2016 as it was back in the early 90s. And so I allocated capital dollars so that they can get air conditioning in that auditorium. Yeah. And I guess it's using my life experience and actually being born and raised in this community has given me the edge on addressing true quality of life issues that are affecting our communities.
Yeah, and I think that's so special. And like you mentioned, having the eye of a Bronx native as well. I know we were just sitting here even before, and we were talking about kind of what you could see even through the windows as well. So it's amazing to see, obviously, how your thoughts work as well, what you want to see and what you want to change. With that as well, obviously with legislation, I know that it's impossible sometimes to cater to everyone. There will be people who are maybe for or against some of the things that you approve or you are behind. How do you make a system that advocates for all Bronxites at the same time?
I mean, when you're making decisions, regardless of if you're a council member in a city level or a state elected, an assembly or senator, or a congressman, there are times that you have to make tough decisions. But you have to look at it holistically. To see how that decision that you're being made, that change that's going to come to your community, how is your community going to benefit from it? And I think at times being a leader is making tough decisions, even though there are unpopular decisions.
Right.
But making sure that you explain why that decision is being made, elaborate why that decision will have a positive impact on your community, and you just move forward, and continue to grind.
Yeah. With that as well, obviously, I know more recently I was reading a report from the New York State Comptroller as well that talked about some of the statistics, especially in the South Bronx as well. And I would love to get your thoughts on it as well. Obviously, when we talk about issues like poverty, even the rate of college graduates in the South Bronx area as well. When you hear some of the statistics, I know they were mentioning it's some of the lowest as well. How, in your term and with what you're doing, working to kind of positively make those impacts and changes as well. What are some of the ways you look to address that?
Yeah, Controller DiNapoli came here a few months ago. He made his announcement actually across the street at the Y, where he put out a blueprint of the South Bronx in terms of the average area median income, in terms of the housing stock, but most importantly in terms of our economy. Job creation. And what he highlighted in his report was the increase of job creation here in the South Bronx. See, I represent an extremely low-income community, but I also represent an extremely vibrant community when it comes to the economy, because I represent the Hunts Point community, where you have the Hunts Point produce market, meat market, fish market, Baldors, and over 700 businesses in the Hunts Point community that are providing good-paying jobs. And so at my time in the council, something that I've been extremely proud of is the ability to approve over 10,000 units of 100% affordable housing throughout my district. Zero market rate. Something that I'm extremely proud of is the ability to have passed a piece of legislation that would require all new developers that are building affordable housing and are getting city dollars, that 15% of their units are actually set aside for individuals that are in the homeless shelter that are ready for independent living. And so, my focus has been job creation, creating affordable housing, and addressing quality of life issues in our district.
Yeah, when it comes to those issues as well, I know you also talk about that Hunts Point market as well. I know I was reading a little bit about your upbringing as well, especially having immigrant parents as well. And I wonder too, being from the Bronx, seeing their work in the Bronx as well, how important was that to the work that you're doing now today?
Yeah. So my mom, she, when I was growing up, she worked in the healthcare field. And my dad, actually, he worked in the Hunts Point produce market for 18 years. My father, working in the market, he was a Teamsters Local 202 member, and he had great benefits. And it was because of that good paying job that my dad had in the Hunts Point produce market as a Teamsters member that I was able to get my health care, my eye care, see the dentist, my sister as well. They were challenging times. We also grew up kind of in poverty, but it was the ability to have those jobs that my parents had, which paid the bills, clothed us, fed us, and allowed us to go to school.
Yeah, obviously now being in this position where you can make change as well, what is it maybe the biggest lesson that you've learned along your journey, you would say?
I think, my biggest lesson, what I'm mostly proud of is the ability to give back, right, and bring positive change to my community. I had an opportunity to move to another part of the city or outside of the city, but I chose to stay here, and I'm raising my family here. I have a 9-year-old son. And those of you that know me, I'm constantly taking my son to events, whether it's food drives, turkey drives, back to school events, cleanups, park cleanups, community events. He was with me at a community event, which was a little heated last week, but he was there with me by my side. And it's important that, I educate him on giving back and really working with your neighbors to address their issues. So I think what I'm most proud of is the ability to have the, to have the platform and the voice to bring change, and at the same time having my son by my side watching what his dad is doing, and hopefully when he gets older, he could get into in terms of ensuring that he wants to give back to his community as well.
Yeah, and when you talk about those events as well, I know we've been a part of covering some of them and talking with you at the events, from Black History Month celebrations. I know there's an upcoming Mother's Day celebration as well. Talk to me about when you have these events, the importance of focusing on the local community and making sure that they're a part of these experiences. Yeah,
my office, we do multiple events throughout the year, mostly to highlight the different cultures that we have in our diverse city, and and in this diverse Bronx. In February, we hosted our Black History Month. The month of March, we had, it was Women's Heritage Month. Right. So we had a Women's of Essence event. May's coming up. We're hosting our Mother's Day event in June. To celebrate the Puerto Rican culture, we're having our Noche Borinqueña in July. To celebrate the Bronx Dominican Day Parade, we're hosting Noche Quisqueyana. And so we try our best to host these events, always free of charge. In none of our events, we charge nothing. We do our fundraising to cover, to pay for these events. But what we want to do is that we want to continue to celebrate the cultures, and we want Bronxites to come out and enjoy and celebrate with us.
That's incredible. With that as well, you talked about even bringing your son to the events as well that you have. Talk to me about also bringing in the family to some of the aspects and some of the work that you're doing for them to see. What do you hope that they are inspired to do as well when you see that work?
Yeah, all of our events, when we host them, they're open to the entire family, including our young children. But we also have events geared to our young adolescents and young children. Next month, we will be hosting a helmet giveaway where we're partnering with the Department of Transportation at 52 Playground, where we'll be fitting our children, our young kids from the community, fitting them with helmets. We want to encourage them to ride their bicycles, encourage them to ride their skateboards, but we want them to do it in a safe way.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for even giving us, Council Member, a background, obviously, into the work that you're doing as well and what we can expect to see in our area, especially of the South Bronx specifically. It's time to take a break, but when we come back, we'll get some final thoughts from Council Member Rafael Salamanca Jr. Stay with us.
Congratulations, BronxNet, on your 30th anniversary. Bronx Best is my show, and I had a great experience being able to bring my story to the Bronx Network. It's really changed my life, and I look forward to growing with the network, and I think that it's a wonderful place to grow and learn. And I think that everyone should take advantage of all the wonderful programs and things that go on here.
"19.7% of Bronxites currently experience food insecurity. Meanwhile, instead of these nice, colorful foods, this is the best food that they have access to. If this sounds like you, there are a bunch of resources to get healthy food for free or cheap. If you want to help, you might consider donating or volunteering in one of these places. Community fridges like this one are all over the city, and allow New Yorkers to conveniently donate extra food to people who might need it. Go to this link and find your nearest one. Food banks and pop-up events like these provide millions of healthy meals to families in need. These organizations are distributing meals to Bronxites as we speak, and are always accepting donations and volunteers.
Hope you are enjoying today's In the District conversation with Council Member for District 17. Now, Council Member, we got to speak a little bit about obviously what is happening in the South Bronx and a little intro as well into your journey in politics. I'd love to know, how did it come about you discovering to get into politics and getting in this business?
So I started my young career, my first job was in healthcare. I worked for an organization called Urban Health Plan. I was there for about 7 years. My time there, one day I went to a local community board meeting, Community Board 2. The CEO asked me to join her at this meeting, and I was so intrigued by the community board. Never heard of it, didn't know what they did. But being there, I learned that's your first level of government, where you can come in for letters of support, requests in terms of addressing quality of life issues. It's a hyper-local government, an agency, what I considered. And so I put in my application to join the local community board. Adolfo Carrion at the time was the borough president. He approved my application. I became a member around 2005, 2006. And so I was a community board member until 2010. In 2010, the district manager for that community board, he retired, and there was an opening. And some of my board members encouraged me to put in my resume, and I did. And they selected me as a district manager. And so I was a district manager for Bronx Community Board 2 for about 5.5 years. Wow. And in that time, I really zeroed in on addressing quality of life issues, especially crime in the Hunts Point community. We went after local businesses in Hunts Point who were a nuisance to our community, basically bringing crime to our districts. I also, in that time, in those 5.5 years, I joined the precinct council. I learned what a precinct council does, an opportunity where neighbors, residents, or even business owners can go in once a month and meet with the commanding officer of the precinct. Hear the crime stats in terms of what's happening in your district in terms of crime, what NYPD is actually doing to address those issues, okay, and an opportunity for you to bring up concerns that may be occurring. In that time as the president of the precinct council and also the district manager, I built relationships with my local elected officials. And so at the end of 2015, my predecessor, she resigned from her seat.
Right.
She went to the private sector, and there was an open position, an open seat. And so there was a special election. And so in 2016, I threw my hat in the ring. It was a 45-day election.
Wow.
And so I took a leave of absence from my job as a district manager and just focused full-time on the campaign. And we won. But because I came in a special election, the rules were a little different. So I had in this last 8 years, I've had 5 primaries, okay, to keep my seat. When a regular council member in an 8-year span only has 2 primaries. And so, I think that really kept me on my toes, knowing, hey, you're up. There's elections coming. Right. You need to ensure that voters know that you are actually working and bringing change and getting things done. And so, I took the work that I did as a district manager, and I just went in overdrive in terms of addressing issues and quality of life issues in my community. But I think that what prepared me most to be a council member was those 5.5 years as a district manager.
Yeah, how so would you say, yeah?
Because in those 5.5 years as the district manager, you're having one-on-one meeting with borough commissioners. You're having one-on-one meetings with decision makers in the borough of the Bronx. And so it allowed me to learn the ins and outs of government, of bureaucracy, of red tape, things to do, things not to do, how to actually get things done, who to speak to, who to write letters to, who to make a phone call to, or who I need to go and knock on their door and say, hey, you're not answering my calls, what's happening here? And so when I came into City Hall, I came in with a full understanding of how government works. And I think that really played a major role in me being an effective elected official here in the South Bronx.
Yeah, you also talked about that part of relationships as well. How key is that to the work that you do even now?
Regardless, and I learned this in my professional career, but prior to my career as an elected official, but more as a district manager and in healthcare, you have to build relationships to actually bring change or to get things done. And honestly, this is what this world is about. It's about relationships. Having a key relationship with a certain commissioner or staff member that works for a commissioner, well, I have an issue that commissioner can address. Well, that relationship, that access to that individual or that staffer that has access to that commissioner makes it much easier for me to address that issue that I'm trying to address at a much quicker pace.
Yeah. Now, even with the work that you do, and I love that you focus specifically and you shared how you started even, when you started in health, especially, advocating for those workers, then going into the community board as well, and your journey, especially with re-election, being a council member. How important is it to have a person who is from the Bronx represent the community, especially from Albany to Washington, D.C., on all levels of government as well, you would say?
I think it plays a major role as to how you view your community, how you view your district. You do have individuals who do not live in this borough, move here just to run for office, and they're running for office. But I don't think that they really have the lens or the vision of what is actually needed other than just hearing it from your constituents. You have to live it, right? You have to understand it. What helped me was born and raised, again, in this community. One of the first things that I did was there was an intersection that did not have a stop sign, and me as a child almost got hit by a car. Well, here I am as a district manager or as a council member, and that intersection still doesn't have a stop sign. Spoke to the Department of Health, the Department of Transportation, and we made it happen. I think individuals, when you're from the borough, you have a better understanding of what that borough actually needs.
Yeah, and when you look at the legacy as well, you mentioned it even being kept on your toes as well with all the re-elections that you had to do. I know you most recently as well got re-elected into this role. Again, when you look at the legacy of what you want to leave for the community in the Bronx, South Bronx, and District 17, what does that look like for you?
I mean, I'm extremely proud of the work that we've done. When I walk up and down 104, Westchester Avenue and 3rd Avenue, 149th Street, or I go to the Melrose section, or this is the Melrose section, but I go more to the Hunts Point section along with, and I see the development that's being built. I can tell my son, hey, I was part of it, part of this work. Down the block, there was a school that's being built there. It's going to be an elementary, junior high school. I was part of that, in terms of putting funding. I was able to bring over $350 million of capital dollars in the 8 years that I've been in office. And when you look at how that money has been allocated, I can say that in my time as a council member, I would say about more than half of that money went to remodeling parks or building new parks. In my time in office, I can say that I either rebuilt or created 8 new playgrounds in my council district. When you go to the Hunts Point Rec Center, we're going to make an announcement soon. Just gave them a little over $7 million to redo the Hunts Point Rec Center. They had a baseball field. I was able to allocate $2 million. Now they have baseball lights in their baseball field, so that our children in the community can have some type of sports activity even when it gets darker outside. It is things like that when you drive around and you see it, it brings you this sense of pride of, I was part of that change, that positive change. And my son's gonna benefit from it, my son's son is gonna benefit from it, and my neighbors and friends and family are benefiting from it as we speak.
Definitely, and again, I think we've been a part of covering some of those initiatives, like you mentioned as well. When we talk about in the district, I would love to get your thoughts as well. For people who are hearing your story, even hearing that you are a Bronx native and look at where you are now and the work that you're able to do, the direct impact you're able to do in our community, how can they get involved, or what would you tell them about how to find their passion within democracy and politics as well?
I try to give everyone my experience, how I got to where I'm at, and I'm not just a council member, but I'm also the chairman of what's called the Land Use Committee, which is the most powerful committee in the city council. All development that happens throughout the entire city of New York would have to go through my committee. And so, the pride of my footprint is not just here in the Bronx, but it is citywide. And when I go to schools, I try to tell the students this story. Like, you got a Puerto Rican kid from the South Bronx who's now at one of the highest level of government in the city council, actually bringing change. And I encourage them all to join their local community boards. Don't know if you know this, but we passed a law some time ago where 16 and 17-year-olds are allowed to become community board members.
Right.
And many of them say, well, what is that? It's a volunteer position. What exactly am I going to do? And I try to give them this example. When you want a letter of support, when someone is seeking a letter of support for a business or a development or a street change, you go to your local community board for that support and you vote on it. And you can be the deciding vote on that if it's a split vote. Right? But the example that I give them, there can be a bar or a club or a business that wants to apply for a liquor license, right? And they have to go to the community board for a vote. Now, the state liquor authority, the way they're operating today, they require that you get a letter of support from the community board. So I tell these 16 and 17-year-olds, imagine you're the deciding vote if that business is going to get their liquor license. You're the deciding vote if that business is going to get their liquor license renewed. That's called power. And once you show, you point that out and you show them that their voice matters, their voice has power attached to it, it encourages them to want to become a community board member, and may encourage them to be more civically engaged and actually being a decision maker as to what's happening in your community.
Definitely, and I'm so happy you mentioned that as well, because it shows that you can have your voice be heard no matter your age, obviously starting at that 16, 17, like you mentioned. With that, thank you again, Council Member, for being here, sharing more about your experience as well. Thanks everyone for watching, and remember, you can always watch this program anytime, anywhere on BronxNet.org and YouTube. While you're there, be sure to follow BronxNet on social media to find out who will be the next leader we will sit down with on In the District. From BronxNet's Media and Technology Studios in the South Bronx, I'm Jonathan Calixto. Talk to you soon.